While researching the human soul for more than 10 years, I noticed that most people feel like pieces on a chessboard, but this happens without them realizing the game. Think about it once: you are having a normal conversation. The other person approaches you kindly, perhaps speaking with a pleasant smile, but something doesn't seem quite right. Your instincts try to warn you, and as your mind tries to understand the situation, you suddenly feel trapped. Psychologically, you are being manipulated in some way. But you shouldn't be surprised, these are not random strategies. These are ancient patterns, which I call archetypal shadows. Some people enter your mental space and use these dark psychological methods to shape your reality as they wish. What I am about to explain can help you break free from years of distrust and psychological pressure, so pay attention. I've mentioned that everything in others that bothers us can actually help us understand ourselves better. However, most people do not know how manipulators use this for their own benefit. Use your ability to understand yourself almost as a mechanism of influence over your own mind. Over the next few minutes, I will explain 5 dangerous psychological questions, which I call mental manipulation tools. Not only will they make you aware of the situation, but I will also show methods to empower yourself. By the end of this process, you will have conscious awareness. In other words, you will notice any psychological game before it even starts. But I have a warning: once you learn these patterns, you will start seeing them in everyone around you, friends, family, colleagues, and even strangers. You will notice when they try to enter your psychological doors. Some people might feel uncomfortable when they hear this. So, are you ready to see the web of manipulation? Then let's dive into the depths of the shadows. Here comes our first question: why are you so sensitive? Before opening this question, let me ask you a slightly uncomfortable one. In a situation where you felt wronged, how many times was it immediately said, "You're too sensitive for this"? If a memory comes to your mind instantly, you have experienced shadow projection. Unknowingly, manipulators often use a method I call psychological invalidation. They do not attack your argument, they attack your feelings about your argument. According to my research on the human soul, being sensitive is not a weakness. Instead, it is your subconscious perceiving consistency. As I have mentioned before, when you look into the depths of your heart, your vision becomes clear. He who looks outward dreams, he who looks inward awakens. But here is an interesting situation: manipulators know that sensitive people are often the most intuitive. They can sense lies, feel tension, and notice micro-expressions that others miss. Therefore, rather than hiding their intentions, they have learned to use these abilities against you. Think about this: a financial analyst who finds irregularities in accounts is labeled paranoid until a major fraud is revealed. A woman who notices changes in her spouse's behavior is considered insecure until her feelings prove justified. An employee questioning unethical practices is labeled difficult until a scandal occurs. I call this the persecution of the perceptive. In my analytical psychology, if someone attacks your sensitivity, they are essentially saying, "Stop using your psychological radar. You perceive things that you don't want to notice." But the most interesting part is that I have found a countermeasure that completely neutralizes this manipulation. I call it the conscious application of shadow integration. Next time someone asks you, "Why are you so sensitive?" do not immediately become defensive, explain, or think of apologizing. Look them in the eyes and calmly say, "I am not being sensitive. I am being perceptive. Don't worry, it definitely works." Then observe what happens. Manipulators usually do 3 things: they get angry, revealing their true face. They confirm your suspicions and change the subject. Or they suddenly become overly polite, a desperate attempt at damage control. But be careful, we are just getting started. The people who ask this question often reveal their own psychological state without realizing it. I call this unconscious confession through overcompensation. Think of an example: a spouse who hides their phone cries and says, "Would I ever lie to you?" Or a business partner who never shows the accounts but suddenly plays the victim, whining, "Come on, would I really deceive you?" I call this a display of innocence. Because in deep psychology, true honesty does not perform, it simply exists naturally. Truly honest people do not try to convince you that they will not lie anymore. Their behavior automatically creates a feeling I call unconscious trust. Even without saying anything, you feel peaceful and safe. But manipulators have learned very well how to imitate this feeling. They create emotional dramatic pressure to block rational thinking, trigger your guilt, and push you into panic. Through complicated stories, tears, a hurt tone of voice, or indirect accusations to make you seem cruel for questioning their rights, they try to make you pause. But here is a technique that reveals all of this. When someone says, "Would I ever lie to you?" be careful not to fall into the trap. Apply what I call conscious questioning. Take a stance. Breathe. Then calmly say, "That is not the right question." The question should be, "If you did, would I be able to notice?" This single phrase destroys the entire psychological game because liars feel comfortable inside emotional chaos, but they shrink in the light of your conscious awareness. With this response, a projector turns on instantly and leaves no place for shadows to hide. But you must remember this: the last question, the fifth question, is riskier than the others. Can't we just move on? I realize that this seemingly innocent sentence is actually the manipulator's most powerful weapon. Because when denial, distraction, or guilt-tripping do not work, a method comes into play which I call forced forgetting. They want you to let go of the truth without disturbing them. But most people do not notice this. Real awareness cannot be achieved without pain. A real solution requires facing unpleasant and disturbing truths. Manipulators want to keep you away from this pain or make you ignore it and forgive quickly. But my research on psychological healing has shown me this: moving forward without understanding is like putting a bandage over an infected wound. From the outside it looks better, but the poison continues to spread inside. Think about this: an employee involved in a scandal begs, "Let's leave the past behind and look to the future." A deeply bonded partner says, "Why do we keep bringing this up? We should move on." But I learned something very important: these are not requests for healing, they are requests not to remember. Manipulators do not want to solve the problem, they want you to forget. I call this psychological burial. According to my analytical psychology, real healing happens when what is lodged in the mind becomes conscious. But manipulators prefer to push everything repeatedly back into the dark subconscious they control. I have observed this situation very clearly. First, they deny there is a problem. Then they minimize and belittle it. They may even blame you. Finally, if these tactics do not work, they exhaust you to the point that you give up searching for the truth. But there is a solution. When someone asks you, "Can't we just move on?" apply what I call conscious anchoring. Take a deep breath and calmly say, "I will move forward when I fully understand what happened, not now." This phrase means to them, your peace comes from clarity, not confusion. You cannot be rushed, you cannot be guided by pressure, and you will not let them make you drop the truth. I once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control you, and you will call it fate. Manipulators wait for you to quit and become exhausted so that the patterns in your subconscious can run your life. But now everything is different. You now know the 5 psychological weapons. Now I will tell you the most fundamental defense. Manipulators have a weak point: their survival depends on your emotional reactions. If you eliminate this emotional reaction, their entire system collapses. I call this conscious detachment, the ability to observe without being consumed. My individuation research shows that manipulators fear most encountering someone who does not destabilize. I always teach my patients this: if others try to create chaos and you remain calm. If others try to blur your distinction and you stay clear. If others try to shake your reality and you stay centered, you become what I call psychologically sovereign. Sovereignty is immune to manipulation. When I said, "I am not what happened to me, I am who I choose to be," this is exactly what I meant. But manipulators do not want you to be the person you choose. They want someone confused, guilty, tired, and obedient. That's why before responding to a manipulative question, you must ask yourself what I call the consciousness question: is this reaction coming from my true self, or from a complex they are trying to trigger? Because I realized this, manipulators do not attack your true self. They attack your psychological wounds, your complexes, your insecurities. The "I'm not good enough" complex, the guilt complex, the need for approval complex. But when you respond from your centered self, you become untouchable. Let me share my most effective technique. When faced with a manipulative question, perform a conscious pause. Take a deep breath. Feel your feet on the ground and turn inward. Connect with your true self. Then respond from your center, not from your complex. When I say, "He who looks outward dreams, he who looks inward awakens," this is exactly what I mean. The manipulator wants you to keep dreaming because it keeps you lost. But consciousness is a great awakening. Once awakened, you can never be controlled again. Let me tell you something else interesting. Every situation in which you experience manipulation actually contains a hidden gift. I call this shadow work, the process of becoming stronger by recognizing darkness. Reaching the light happens not by imagining ideal figures but by facing the dark. Every manipulator trying to control you is actually showing you the places where you need stronger psychological boundaries. Every lie clarifies your perception of reality. Every game helps you see the next one faster. According to my psychological development research, people who try to manipulate you unknowingly contribute to your growth. They force you to develop the ability I call conscious discernment. The ability to distinguish truth from illusion, real connection from manipulation, genuine interest from control. When this ability develops, you become dangerous for manipulative people. Not because you fight them, because you actually see them. Because I realize that the greatest fear of manipulators is being seen. They move in the shadows. When you shine the light of awareness on them, all their power disappears. They are like vampires melting in the sunlight. They cannot stand in the presence of centered, conscious, psychologically strong individuals. That is why conscious individuals are the greatest threat to unconscious manipulation. This is your psychological freedom. And now I will say it clearly, are you ready for your freedom? Throughout my career, I have sought a single question: how do people become psychologically free? And what I found is this: freedom is not the absence of difficulties, it is consciousness within difficulties. You now have seeing eyes. You have begun to recognize these 5 questions: sensitivity pressure, demands for trust, reversal of accusations, displays of innocence, and forced forgetting. But more importantly, you have begun to understand the psychology behind each of them. I once said, to fully accept yourself is the hardest task in the world. But there is something you must not forget: trying to manipulate someone who has fully accepted themselves is even more frightening for the manipulator. Because when you are not at war with yourself, no one can drag you into a war against yourself. When you are not ashamed of your sensitivity, no one can use it as a weapon against you. When your desire for approval no longer controls you, no one can control you through that desire. When you are not afraid of conflict, no one can threaten you with loss. I call this becoming such a psychologically integrated individual that external manipulation becomes impossible. You are no longer just a collection of reactive complexes. Even if they push and pull you, you respond by choice, as a conscious individual. And this choice is the greatest enemy of manipulation. Now let me give you a small task. Next week, when someone tries to manipulate you through your emotions, ask yourself, which complex is this person trying to trigger in me? Then respond not from that complex, but from your center. Soon you will see that manipulative people will either change their behavior or drift away from your life. Because I discovered a beautiful truth: when you refuse to participate in manipulative games, you give the people around you the opportunity to exist with one another in their natural state. Your awareness not only liberates you, it creates an environment where you can form genuine connections with others. This is the greatest victory you can achieve against manipulation. You both protect yourself and support those around you with your presence. You are no longer anyone's psychological victim. You are awake. You are aware. You are free. And remember, in a world full of shadows, those who awaken are the ones who bring the light. Let me leave you with one final reminder: your task is not to seek love, it is to identify and remove the walls within yourself that block love. Manipulators tried to build these walls between you and your true connection. But now you can see them, remove them, and open the door to the real relationships awaiting you. Choose consciousness. Choose clarity. Choose psychological freedom. And continue as I intended, awake, aware, strong, and determinately yourself. The greatest fear of the shadow is your light. Turn it on. Keep it shining. And let no one extinguish it. But keep in mind, this is just the beginning. When your mind becomes illuminated, you will see that being exposed to manipulation no longer disturbs you, on the contrary, it strengthens you even more. You have realized that every game played, every lie told, and every manipulation attempted actually gives you a chance to understand where you stand and who you are. Now, the question, so why are you in such a mood? The criticism, why are you exaggerating so much, or subtle attacks like, do you really need this, become immediately recognizable to you. Things that previously went unnoticed are now very clear, small changes in speech, the eyes suddenly shifting away, tiny mismatches in body movements. All of these are signals for your awareness system. The moment you sense these signs, you not only become an alert observer but also turn into someone who can completely manage their inner world of emotions. Because the most important weapon of those who use people is the behavior you exhibit before understanding what is happening, these behaviors increase their ability to control you and trap you within the confusion of your own mind. But now, when you use the method of slowing down by thinking, and form every response from within, that control no longer belongs to them. This is not only a way to protect yourself but also an effort towards spiritual relief. The nicest part is this: the more balanced you are, the easier it becomes to notice those who try to control others, because they operate in secrecy, prefer darkness, and become ineffective in the light. Manipulators panic when they sense that you know what is happening, because then they no longer feel safe. When you act openly and honestly, it becomes difficult for them to apply their confusing and manipulative tactics. At that moment, you understand what it truly means to be psychologically strong. Being strong does not just mean preventing others from using you, it also means understanding your own feelings and behaviors and directing your life consciously. This understanding gives you both freedom and strength, because you no longer get lost in the problems of others, you remain in your own balance. From now on, inquiries like, "Why did you behave like that?" or criticisms like, "Did you really deserve to get this?" become examinations that help you understand yourself rather than things that upset you. To complete this examination successfully means proving your own spiritual development and transforming the negative energy of those who try to influence you into goodness within yourself. This is exactly what those who try to control others fear most. You're beginning to see through their games, your indifference to their manipulative words. They depend on your confusion to cope with their own negative emotions, because they can only escape their discomfort by controlling others. But once you become conscious and understand what is going on, their traps fail and they can no longer harm you. Now let me tell you this: in this journey, the main issue is not being afraid that people will think you did something wrong. Because manipulators target this exact fear, they make you feel powerless, create a fear of being judged, and this fear makes you act. You are no longer acting on instinct, instead, you act with awareness and control. This ruins their plans. What you feel is this: the traces of emotional abuse, the labyrinth of intertwined accusations, cleverly crafted manipulation, games played in secrecy, and the merciless, pretend you don't remember, moments. Now I can tell you that this situation can actually be something good. Times like these give you a chance to understand where you stand and what you care about. Look at yourself and think, do these questions or actions shake my balance, or do they push me to understand myself better? After you find your answer, you respond as truly as it comes from within. This response usually silences manipulators, because when they see a person speaking from their inner power, they are helpless. This is the moment they lose their influence. That is when your real personality appears. You respond not on autopilot but consciously and intentionally. You have now reached a state where the behaviors of people around you can no longer easily affect you. And another thing you might notice, this does not just support you, it also allows the people around you to have the opportunity to be themselves. When you find the power within yourself, the people around you also find a reason to explore and confront their own inner selves. In other words, focusing your attention and being aware acts like a mental accelerator. No one can guide you anymore because you no longer react instantly to events. Your responses come from sincerity, and this sincerity does not allow others to use you. This new understanding gives you such great strength that from now on you not only recognize when people try to manipulate you but also gain the power to improve the situation with your own inner strength. You don't just thwart someone's plans, you can transform their negative behaviors into something better with your own internal power. The most important lesson you will understand on this journey is that remaining calm and balanced when others try to influence you is actually the most effective thing you can do. No matter how angry or flustered manipulators get, they cannot affect your essence. This causes them to become ineffective. And don't forget, a person who is balanced within and aware of what they are doing not only resists others' games but also strengthens their connections with the people around them. The tactics of those trying to manipulate you no longer work. When you demonstrate the power that comes from within, people around you perceive this influence and begin to act accordingly. Therefore, the ability to stay present is not just a way to avoid problems, it is a tool for personal development. Manipulators' games collapse, your boundaries become clear, and your awareness grows. You have such a great inner strength that from now on anyone attempting to control you is essentially wasting their efforts. Instead of acting instinctively, you now act by conscious decision. This is the essence of psychological independence. You now decide what to do. Your life is shaped not by reflexive responses but by deliberate choices. You also understand this. This situation helps you become more compassionate both toward yourself and toward others. When you notice someone trying to manipulate you, instead of getting angry immediately, you can attempt to understand why they act that way. In this way, you can maintain your boundaries while also showing understanding to the other person. This does not mean you approve of their actions, it simply means you protect your own inner peace and independence. This is precisely why confronting our shadow self, understanding the hidden parts within us, and carefully transforming them is so necessary. The true value of light cannot be fully appreciated without experiencing darkness. Never forget, the spark within you is the greatest danger for those trying to use others. They wander in darkness. When you are in the light, their power diminishes. Your eyes are now open, you are fully aware, and you are independent. No one can drag you into their problems anymore, and no one can use the answers you give without thinking to serve their own interests. Your life is shaped by the choices you make. This is the most important victory you have achieved against others trying to control you. Finally, keep in mind, this state of consciousness and the ability to find inner balance does not just change you, it affects everything around you. As you act with awareness, the people around you are also drawn toward their own inner world and find the courage to confront their fears. This means your awareness acts as a guiding light. And while light may not completely erase darkness, it diminishes its power. From now on, when someone tries to influence you, there is no need to worry. These situations will enhance your awareness, make you stronger, and reinforce your independence. Therefore, choose to be awake, always, in every event and in all your relationships. Because your true strength lies in being aware and maintaining your inner balance. From now on, it has become almost impossible for others to manipulate you. No matter how hard they try, they cannot reach your inner world. And don't forget, there are others who feel like you do. You are not alone. This awareness and ability to make your own decisions can also guide others. Your responsibility is not only to illuminate yourself but also to give others the opportunity to courageously confront their own inner darkness. And this light, in a universe filled with shadows, shows the way to true liberation and independence. Be awake, aware, and unwaveringly yourself. This is true psychological emancipation. To exist among shadows without losing your light, and to allow others to find their own light as well. You are no longer under anyone's control, no one can manipulate you, because you stand at your center, live consciously, and choose freedom. And remember, the greatest fear of the shadow is your light. Turn it on. Keep it shining. And do not let anyone extinguish it.